This is BKL Nightly. I am Thad Brown with Caleb Carr, Rachel Liebert, Full House here on a Monday. Draft is getting close, everybody. 10 days away now. A week from Thursday is when everybody will be on the clock. Today, what we're going to do is talk about some what we're going to call under-the-radar draft needs for the Bills. Everybody knows about defensive line. Everybody knows about linebacker, receiver. These are the things that have been talked about ad nauseum since the Bills were eliminated by the Broncos back in January. Today, we're going to talk about some of the other things that might be a need, that might be sneaky level needs. And we're not just talking about things that might be addressed in rounds 4, 5, 6. These are things the Bills could, in theory, talk about as a first or even a third round draft pick. So one of the first things I want to talk about, and this is kind of the genesis for this whole show. It actually started with the show that we did with Carl Jones last week in terms of why the Bills might need some help on the offensive line coming up soon. O'Cyrus Torrence is going into the last year of his contract, and at some point he's going to get paid by somebody. Is it the Bills? Well, if that happened, they would have 4 big money offensive linemen going into 2027 with Connor McGovern, with Spencer Brown, and Deion Dawkins. I went back and researched it, and over the last 10 years, the last 20 Super Bowl teams, of those 20 participants, 15 of them had at least 3 guys who were on a rookie contract or lower. And there were only 2 teams who had 4 guys who were big money type guys. Those were both Eagles teams, unsurprisingly. And even those 2 teams, of the 4 guys, there was one of them was kind of on a mid-level contract. If the Bills signed O'Cyrus Torrence to a sizable contract next year, they currently have 3 guys who are in the top 13 at their position. Torrence would make it 4. So before we talk about how the Bills might go about addressing this, do we think that it's even plausible the Bills go into next year, 2027, with 4 offensive linemen on a big contract? Caleb, you and I talked about this a little bit last week, so why don't you open up the discussion here?
I mean, I think it's definitely plausible, just because I don't think the Bills are going back and looking like, oh, what are the last 20 teams that went to the Super Bowl did? Okay, we're not going to do that. Definitely not. There's other ways to win football games. There's not one blueprint, or else everyone would have a Super Bowl at this point. So I think it's definitely possible. I don't think the Bills want to do it. I think they want to find some way, whether that is through Torrance or whether that's through somebody else on the offensive line, moving them. I highly doubt the Bills. This is something that they want to put all their money towards.
I don't think you're wrong that the Bills are necessarily doing the same type of research that I just did, but I think they probably should be, right? I mean, this is something they should be looking at. And whether you want to actually go through the 20 Super Bowl teams and break it down, what was each guy's contract, how much were they making, I didn't dive into, and you could, percentage of the salary cap. I brought up how the Bills currently have 3 top 13 guys. Maybe the cutoff line for that is you could have 3 in the top 15. And then if you have 1 guy who's below that, you're fine. But I don't think it takes too much thinking to say, 4 big contracts on the offensive line, Rachel, probably is not the ideal roster build.
Yeah, this is really interesting to me because when I initially would think about an offensive line, I would think veteran guys would be the recipe for success. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it hasn't, at least with the Super Bowl teams, is really I'm trying to kind of figure out, why that is maybe. I agree with Caleb. I don't think the Bills are necessarily wanting to put all of their money into this, but I do, if it is long-term, and I'm sure we'll address this too, how does that affect this draft? Because it could drastically affect it now because initially too, when you brought this up to me, I was like, O-line, I don't think they really need to do anything with the O-line this year. But then you mentioned Torrance, and who's a guy that we weren't even sure he was going to be here this year. And then the whole Deion Dawkins trade is just a possibility that people have thrown out. I think it is really interesting, but I don't know if I were the Bills, if I would put all of my money into sticking to that formula to develop their O-line.
In terms of keeping the 5 guys they have?
In terms of trying to, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe I would, if you're at that core group, I mean, the Bills offensive line has been one of the better units, I think, too. So I think if you're looking at it from that perspective, I don't think they need to follow what the other teams are doing if they're having these lesser contracts in. So I think maybe what they have now is good enough for the time being, but like you said, long term, it does raise a lot of questions.
Again, laying out the stat, 15 of the last 20 teams that make the Super Bowl had less than 3 players who were making big money on the offensive line, less than 3 starters. Whether the Bills were going to have, this is not a this year question. O'Cyrus Torrence is going to be on the team this year, and he is going to make a rookie contract this year, so they're fine. They're within the margin for error of this stat I'm throwing out or this research I've done. Now that we've kind of discussed whether the Bills should go this route, and they could, because to your point, the offensive line has been a strength of this team. And hey, look, if you want to spend a bunch of money somewhere, at least be getting bang for your buck, and the Bills are doing that on the offensive line. But if we assume they don't want to go down the road of having 4 highly paid offensive linemen as starters for next year, how do you address it? And the reason we bring it up now is because if the Bills don't address it in the draft, the other options are going to be all March of 2027. In other words, you try and sign O'Cyrus Torrence then, or you make a trade then. And it's not ideal to have that pressure of, well, we might lose a guy up front if we don't address it now. You could argue that there are other, Cedric Van Pran Granger, I guess, there's a world where he's a guard and can move over and be that guy next year. Tylen Grable's a reserve, maybe they could have. But more likely, if they don't want to have those 5 starters next year because those guys will cost, you address it now. So option A is you draft a guard this year and you leave that guy for next year, or have developed that guy for next year when you let O'Cyrus Torrence walk. The benefit there is you can fit a guard in your roster right now. You can put him in as a backup. He's protection in case Alec Anderson is not what you think he'll be at the left guard spot, or if Austin Corbett is not the veteran you think he could be. If those guys are all good, you still have good depth on the inside, and you can use that guy you're drafting not only as the backup to either guard, but technically the center, because if Connor McGovern gets hurt, Alec Anderson can move over, and now you have another guy you can slot into that spot. So as a roster build for this year, it works out. And this is a guy you can almost certainly draft in round 3. So guard looks great from all those points of view. But if you do use the guard as your future solution, then you're letting a guy who's walking into his prime and O'Cyrus Torrence walk, which is not ideal. So the other option would be maybe you draft a tackle and you trade either Deion or Spencer Brown, probably Deion Dawkins because he's the older guy. He'll be 33 next April, so that's certainly, getting towards the end of his career. And you get to keep O'Cyrus Torrence as the third big money contract you want to hold on to. The problem with that is, A, he doesn't back up as easy this year because that guy only helps you at tackle. And if he can't play both right and left, then he's really not helping you much at all. And B, most of the time, if you want to have a starting left tackle, he's got to be a first-round pick. That's another piece of research I did. I won't go through the numbers, but like almost everybody who's a starting left tackle in the NFL is a first-round pick. So back to you guys. Guard or tackle? Which route makes more sense if the Bills are going to address that in this draft? Rachel, you got to go first because I said so.
Let me unpack all of the
The There's a lot
scenarios.
there. Yeah.
I would probably go with a tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it's a tough call.
Just because you're drafting a tackle in the first round, assuming that Dawkins would be your.
Well, I mean, look, you don't have to draft a tackle in the first round, and to be fair, to let you think about it a little more, you could find the Bills found a right tackle in Spencer Brown in round 3, so you certainly could go down there, and maybe there's a world where Spencer Brown moves over to left tackle. The Bills did work him out there a little bit as a rookie. It's not impossible. It's a harder switch than most people think, but it's not impossible. But if you really are thinking this far down the road that we want a guy who can start, generally at left tackle, it's only a first rounder. And especially where the Bills are picking, even at pick 26, you might not get a great option at tackle. This year's draft is okay. So it's not out of the realm the Bills could grab a tackle down at the bottom of round 1, but it's a tougher fit in terms of being able to grab a guy that'll work. I mean, no matter what we do with all this, the Bills got to find a guy who can play. And they're more likely to do it in round 1 than they are in round 3, just because of how hard it is to find that elite left tackle player.
Yeah, I think I would go with a tackle. And I mean, if it would be in the first round, that would obviously be the ideal situation. Just because I think too, with who is in that room, just O-line in general, there's a lot of guys that I think have played guard or have moved around a lot on the line. I think tackle, maybe there's less versatile guys in the room. And like you said, Dawkins is getting up there in age to the point of, they could trade for him and probably get something out of it. I think I would go tackle. Is there a third option that they just don't do any of this and then
sure. Oh yeah. But like we said, the third option is you push this whole problem off until next year, But then the problem is you have to address it next year. So that means either you are paying Osiris Torrance or you're paying somebody else in free agency, or you walk into the draft with, we absolutely have to find somebody, which teams generally don't want to do. So yeah, there is an option. But the more proactive choice is to address it this year.
I think I'm kind of in between the two of do something about it this year, but wait till next year. So I would also go tackle because I think one, like if you're telling me like Spencer Brown's not moving.
Yeah, I think Brown and McGovern are stuck. Yeah.
Brown and McGovern are good. So now you're looking at, okay, so you're pretty much picking between Torrance and Dawkins. Mm-hmm. Dawkins. I love Deion Dawkins. Deion Dawkins is a big culture guy. Unfortunately, you can't keep those guys around forever. Like it's still a business. I would say that business-wise, game plan-wise, team building-wise, you probably go tackle and you invest in the younger guy that probably maybe has a higher ceiling. You don't really know. Like he's still growing. He's still developing. I think, though, that taking a tackle in the first round doesn't have to be done this year. I think you can take a guy in the third or even fourth or fifth round, especially if we're not like, oh, this is a really good tackle class.
It's not.
Exactly. Like we're not, that's what I'm saying. If we're saying that this isn't a great tackle class, then why are you taking a pick? Why are you taking a tackle in the first round if you're not 100% sure on him? Take a guy in the third or fourth round. If he hits, awesome, problem solved. Cool. Like we've seen Brandon Beane hit on guys. Now, obviously can't say we've seen him hit on too many offensive linemen late, like in the mid rounds, but we've seen him hit on guys in the mid rounds. If you take a tackle in the fourth round and he hits, perfect. You trade away Dawkins next year. He's in there, boom, problem solved. If not, then it's a problem that you worry about next year. I like the idea of drafting a guard this year because it adds really good like depth. But like let's say Torrance had 2 years left on his contract and this wasn't like the Torrance part of this wasn't a discussion, I don't think any of us would be like, Bills really, really need guard depth. Like that's a spot they really need to go get. So I'm not like too like, oh yeah, let's go get him because of this added bonus. To me, it's not really, the guard depth isn't really an added bonus. And I think I'd rather invest in the young guy. So I think the best case scenario is draft a guy in the mid round. If he hits, awesome. If not, then it's a problem you worry about next year. I'm just not like drafting a tackle in the first round that you're not 100% sure on that could be a starter next year seems like a waste of a pick when there's so many other positions that you can go get. Instead, they're going to help your team right now.
And that's why I'm not a huge fan of the first round tackle idea, although it could easily be the right path. The other thing is like if the Bills spend a first rounder on a tackle, that's not maybe he'll be a starter. That's the starter.
Yes, yeah.
Like the writing goes right on the wall. It's more than an expectation. It's Deion Dawkins, this is going to be your last year, and we're going to be moving on from you next year. Please do well.
We might move on before next
exactly,
year.
Exactly, right. Yeah. So that would be the plan. I would draft the guard because you can get a guard mid-rounds who can play. He fits better this year, and I would not worry about the fact that, yeah, I've got a great young player that I'm going to let walk, but this is the business, and if I'm going to build my roster, I've got to manage it a certain way. And yeah, my problem is that I've been too good at finding offensive linemen. Is it a problem? Yes, it's a good problem though. And we make it work from there. Exactly. It's a great problem. And if the worst thing that happens to me is that I have to go out and find another guard, but I'm also got a good chance to get a nice compensation pick when Osiris Torrance signs somewhere else, then I will live with that. Because as much as you prefer to have the younger player going forward, I think, than Deion Dawkins, everything else about it says don't try and draft the tackle early. We didn't talk about this at all. Like we said, or at least the implications of this, if you draft a tackle this year, there's no doubt what he's here to do. And then that becomes a talking point for the duration of the season. Whereas if you take a guard in the fourth round, it's a backup. It's a guy, we'll see if he's good. Maybe he'll help out. Provide Alec Anderson competition. It's not a story. You draft a tackle round 1 or even round 3, to be honest, it becomes a bit of a story. I think.
honestly, I think I'm on what I said before. I think works for tackle or guard because like you can take it, like you said, you can take a guard in round 3 or round 3 or 4, and if he works, awesome. Now your problem solved. If he doesn't work, now next year you figure out, okay, do we go Torrance or do we go Dawkins? And you don't have to make that choice this year if you go a guard in the mid round.
Yeah, I don't think a first round offensive lineman in any regard. I don't think that's the direction the Bills should go regardless. So I'm also with if you are going to draft one, a later round, and if he works out, he works out. I don't think a first round tackle or guard in any of the higher rounds, I think, is the way to go. Because the thing too is I'm kind of torn between, okay, you address the needs now, and O-line is not one of the glaring needs for this season now, but then also Joe Brady's first season, are we kind of treating this first year as just there's no expectation. So we're building up of what is like the year beyond that. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know if we're, I mean, if I was doing this, I would not be drafting the tackle in the first round. But if we're looking ahead, is that what the Bills are maybe prioritizing because this is the first season of their head coach? I don't know.
There is a good discussion about what exactly the Bills should treat this season as because of that. But we don't have time to get into that right now. That'll be probably after the draft. All right, let's move on to some other. And look, I expected that discussion to be long. We could probably do a whole show on that, frankly. But let's hit some other of the under the radar needs. The next one I want to talk about is at safety. Do the Bills need to find a long-term answer there? You got C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Cole Bishop this year. There are options. Jordan Hancock you just drafted last year, but there's not a great long-term option. So, Caleb, is that something the Bills could even use a first-round pick on this year?
I think it's possible. I think this position more than any other that we're going to talk about is like the biggest along the lines of the debate. Do you draft the best player available or do you draft to fill a need? Which a lot of people have, like which option is better, which option helps you the most. I think this is the biggest one for the Bills in that with your first pick in the draft, I think the only safety that you draft in this, that you take in this draft and that you expect to really be a good part of your safety core is Dylan Thieneman. I think he's the only guy. And so at pick number 26, if he's there, he's probably one of the best players available. So do you pick him and you go best player available and you figure it out with your safety room, even though you just took a ton of free agents? Do you just figure it out? Or do you draft to fill a need and you go edge or you go wide receiver or you go D tackle, like whatever, fill it in there? I think I think the only guy that I would be like, yeah, go get him is Dylan Thieneman. And even then I'm like, depends on how the wide receivers and edge rushers have fallen in the draft. Like if all of them are gone and for some reason Thieneman's sitting there, sure, go ahead. But if Thieneman's there and there's still like 3 wide receivers that you really like or some edge rushers or a couple D tackles, I don't really see a need to do it.
I'm with you. I'm more of, yes, there's needs at safety, but I don't think safety should be your first round pick unless you said someone is sitting there that is a glaring, everyone else that we thought we were going to be able to take isn't sitting there. But I mean, you have Cole Bishop, you have Gardner-Johnson. Other than that, you don't really have anybody that I feel like is who is Hancock? We haven't seen much from him. Yeah, and then Damar Hamlin is still in the room. So it would for now. So I think it does need to be addressed. I don't see this as being a round 1 pick to address this year.
With you guys, yeah. If I don't think Thieneman or Downs are falling that far to where the Bills could even trade up for him. I'm not a huge Emmanuel McNeil Warren guy to where I want to spend a first round pick on him. There are 5 guys who are a group of guys who could very easily be a round 3 pick. I'd be okay with that depending how the draft fell, but I don't think this is a need the Bills need to address early, even if you might want to throw a guy out there. Moving over in the secondary, how about a corner? Is this a spot? I think this is a spot the Bills have to address, and you always do as a team hit a corner in the draft just because they're good special teams guys very often. But do you want to, Rachel, take a corner early, considering that right now you have Christian Benford, you have Max Hairston, and you have not much else?
I'm more of a take it in the later rounds. I just don't think, like I've said before, I think there's so many more glaring issues that need to be addressed before you maybe address corner. Yes, we don't know how Hairston's going to fit into this defense, and that's really, like you said, the 2 guys, Benford and Hairston, is really all you've got. I think it does need to be addressed, but I'm more of on the later round, maybe get lucky and get another Benford in the draft, but I don't see this as a super urgent as far as the earlier rounds go.
I agree that I think no matter what, picking up a cornerback in a mid to late round is always a good idea. I think when you look at this roster right now, if the Bills are comfortable where they are or they have different plans, then there's no need to go for a cornerback in a high round. If you're like, oh, we need to address cornerback, like if that's, like you said, you draft cornerback pretty much no matter what. Even if you don't really need it, you draft one. If the Bills are saying, no, we need a cornerback, I don't think they can wait to round 4 or 5 to go get him. With what this room's looking like, if you are expecting the cornerback that you pick up in 2026 in the 2026 draft to like be a big time starter or
the third guy at least,
be the third guy, you probably need to get him early. And again, I just think there's bigger needs at other positions. I could see maybe like a 3rd round pick, but I don't know if the cornerback class is like deep enough for a 3rd round pick to be expected to like make a good enough contribution to a team. So I think if you're going in, you're like, oh, we really need a third guy, then it probably needs to be the 1st round. And I still just don't think that that's worth it.
I do think that there are a couple corners in Jermod McCoy and Avion Terrell who are teases because of how potentially good they could be. Both guys have injury issues. McCoy's coming off an ACL. Terrell tweaked his hamstring around the combine, so maybe he falls a little bit. I'm with you guys in that I would not want to spend a pick there, in part because they just spent a 1st round pick there last year and spent another 1st round pick 3 years before that. So we've kind of, had enough of 1st round picks in round 1, I would think, if you're the Bills. But there is a need there, and it's a weird draft in that you're not going to find any slam dunk prospects at 26. Not that you normally do, but this year it's less so than usual. So if McCoy falls, I wouldn't hate it. And Terrell, if you draft him, I could see an argument for him being the nickel. And I know that they signed D. Alford to ostensibly do that, but you don't have to play that guy you signed to a relatively medium-ish contract. You can go find a rookie that you really like in a 1st round. Your nickel's going to play quite a bit. I don't mind spending a 1st rounder. So I don't think it's ridiculous, but I'm with you guys that probably not in round 1.
It is really interesting too, though, that the Bills have really like not addressed corner at all, other than Alford. Like you said, he's probably going to be nickel. So does that make you feel like maybe this is something they are going to address in the earlier rounds? Like, it's interesting that they haven't really done anything with this in the offseason.
I think the big thing about that is I think a lot of veterans this year have decided not to sign until after the draft. So the Bills' hands are kind of tied about what to do. It does still leave the door open to that happening, though.
I think this is, again, similar to the safety conversation where, like, heaven forbid the Bills' top 6 wide receivers and top 6 edge rushers all go in the first 20 picks. Well, now you maybe have a cornerback that fell down and maybe he's the best player on the board. And if he is, then yeah, go ahead and go get him, or you trade back or you do something else. But depending on how the board falls, I just don't, even if one of those guys falls, I still think that if there are other prospects that fit your needs a little bit better, though, that's where you should go.
Let's talk about one of my favorite draft discussions every single year. Should the Bills draft a young quarterback to be the 2nd or 3rd, the number 1 backup, whatever you want to call it? There are some options this year. It's not a great quarterback draft. It's Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson. These are not guys Buffalo will be drafting. But Rachel, after that, is this something that the Bills maybe address finally this year?
I am so torn on this question. I think I don't even know if I have a full answer, because on one hand, what their backup quarterback situation now isn't ideal, but then also, do you want to not waste a pick, because it's obviously something that you need a good backup quarterback, but I don't know if this is like a priority for the Bills right now. And I think bringing in, I don't know. I don't think you waste a pick on a backup quarterback, but if they do, I don't like disagree with it. I can see why they would, but I don't know. I think I'm still trying to figure out, honestly, what the best way to go with this one is.
I think I'm kind of with you. For a second, let's just throw away the Brock Purdy situation. Let's just pretend that Brock Purdy doesn't exist. You're probably not going to find even a solid backup in the 7th round, even the late 6th round. You're probably not going to do it. So therefore, if the Bills are like, okay, we need a backup quarterback, you probably got to take one early 6th, late 5th, like somewhere in that range. You probably don't want to wait until, they have a couple of 7th round picks, right?
They have a 4, 2 5s, and a 6. I'll look it back up here in a minute.
I thought they had some 7th round picks, but
they do. I have at least something in the 7th. I don't know how many off the top of my head.
you probably don't want to wait till those picks if you're going to pick a backup quarterback that you're expecting to be a decent backup. So therefore, you have to take a guy earlier. And I don't hate it, but again, kind of like what you were saying with like wasting, maybe not wasting, but are you going to find a guy that's good enough or better enough than Kyle Allen to be worth the pick at that spot? Like, because you're not just going to, like, if you're like, oh, we'll take a guy in this 5th or 6th round and they're going to compete with Kyle Allen and maybe Kyle Allen wins the job and he becomes the backup quarterback, then it probably wasn't worth a 5th or 6th round pick. And even if they are better, how much better are they than Kyle Allen? Like, how much of a better option is this rookie quarterback going to be than any other backup that you can get in the league?
I'm not worried about it this year. If my guy can develop to be better than Kyle Allen in 2027, then I feel like it's been worth my while to make that pick.
But I think I think we can all agree that Kyle Allen definitely wasn't the best backup option out there.
No.
Like, there's plenty of better ways that the Bills could go. So let's pretend for a second that they did go one of those better ways. I still don't even think that you're going to get a guy in the 6th round that can develop to be better than one of those guys.
It's really interesting that the Bills picked him up.
Best friends with Josh Allen.
I mean, I understand, but like
we've gone over this.
Like, because like really, like, to your point, you're not gonna want to get a backup quarterback in like as your last pick because what's the point? So, did the Bills think that Kyle Allen is better than the back half of the quarterbacks available? Like, it's really interesting.
You bring Kyle Allen on board now, and then if things don't work out for you in the draft, you're covered. You don't have to worry about it later.
Yeah.
The Bills have 2 5s, a 6, and a 7 is what they have in the draft after their pick 4. The things I'll say about this is Garrett Nussmeier is a guy who's seen as I think can really be a long-term backup. He's probably going to go round 3, maybe high round 4. If he's available in the 5th and on the Bills, I'd be very interested in that. The other name I want to throw out there is Talon Green from Arkansas. He's 6'6", 227, and he's a great runner. If you want like Josh Allen light with a quarter of the passing ability that you can throw on your bench, and look, at worst, maybe he's your new 3rd and 4 guy. Maybe you let him sneak a few times so Josh doesn't take the hits all the time. Or if Josh gets hurt, you do have someone with this somewhat similar physical capabilities. I would be interested in trying that in round 5 if I'm the Bills. So I always think this is something the Bills should try. And there's always options I can talk myself into. And those are the guys for this year.
I think it's also just tough because, I mentioned earlier how Brandon Beane has hit on some of these mid-round guys before.
Yes.
Like,
so you're giving up a valuable pick
so
for this team.
You're giving up a valuable pick
sure.
because if you draft a cornerback there instead and he hits in 2 to 3, if you draft a Christian Benford type guy and he hits, well, now you're pretty set at cornerback. If you draft a 5th round backup quarterback and he hits, all you have is a backup quarterback.
Right.
That's it. A guy that hopefully is never going to see the field.
But you do have a trade chip, which would be the best case scenario. And look, I know.
Yeah, but are you using a 5th round draft pick on a potential trade value guy?
Well, I'm also using it on a guy that could be my backup if Josh Allen gets hurt. I mean, we've talked about if Josh Allen gets hurt for a month, we feel like the season's over.
Probably.
It'd be nice to have a guy that would not put you in that situation. Yeah. But don't get me wrong, I'm reaching a little bit to get there. Real quick, one more spot I want to talk about. Kicker punter. Anybody got an interest in kicker and punter this year? Not a great year. Trey Smack from Florida, who's got a great name, is the top kicker. The Bills did talk to Jack Stonehouse from Syracuse, the punter. Rachel, anything interested here?
I think maybe punter is maybe more of the priority for if you're going to go that way. I think kicker, Tyler Bass is sufficient enough. And your punter, I think, is maybe where you would want to look at. Maybe you said Syracuse is where that kid is from. So,
yes.
I mean,
he's not the best, but he's one of the guys.
Yeah. So I would say probably go punter, but either way, this might be like your last. But then who's out there? Yeah, it's who's on the board. It's the whole thing. I'm never going to be an NFL GM. I'll tell you that.
I agree that punter is probably the bigger need, but I do think that with there is a big question mark at kicker because we don't know what Tyler Bass is going to be, and we don't even know if Matt Prater can keep doing what he's been doing for much longer. We have seen some rookie kickers succeed as of late, so that's not an area that I would hate. I wouldn't hate just kind of wiping it clean on kicker, getting rid of Prater, getting rid of Bass, and picking up a rookie kicker and seeing if maybe like a Tyler Loop did last year, if they can succeed in the rookie year.
I think the contract that Bass has right now makes it hard for the Bills to move on this year. punter to me is the more likely pick, although I'd be surprised if they spend a pick on either spot. Just go grab that guy as an undrafted free agent. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of BKL Nightly. As always, you can catch the show on YouTube and on Spotify. For Caleb and Rachel, I'm Thad. We're back again on Thursday. Talk to you then.